Hello everyone and welcome to Stan the Wine Man TV. I am your host, Stan Rattan, and this is a Blue Collar Wine Show where I help you spend your wine dollars wisely. And I have a special guest, a good friend of mine, Mike Sharadin. We met in 2007 when I had my wine shop, Brazenly Lucid Wines, and he brought his dessert wine to show me, and then we just kind of bonded after that. And he just gave me his last 750 bottle of his 2007 Cab Franc, which we both love Cab Franc, and I think he makes used to make one of the best Cab Francs in the state of Washington. And so what we're going to do today is talk about Cab Franc because we like it so much. We have a blind tasting of 4 Cab Francs, and none of these are from the traditional producing area of Cab Franc. So there isn't one from Bordeaux, and there's not one from the Loire Valley. I think Mike and I both agreed that in a blind lineup, if we had one Loire Valley Cab Franc, we would pick it out.
Yeah.
It's so easy.
Yeah.
Because it's so vegetal.
It's vegetal, it's got, well, it's cooler, sometimes it gets great floral content, so yeah,
It'd be too easy.
it would be different, it's unique.
So this is the many faces of Cab Franc, all the different expressions of Cab Franc, because it is one of those varietals that does jump all over the place. But I wanted Mike to tell you guys a little bit about himself. He started a winery called Northwest Totem Cellars, and he's big on respect for the Native Americans. And tell them how you got involved in the wine world.
Well, I had retired, I coached swimming for 35 years, and my wife and I moved up to the Northwest, and after a stint of remodeling the house that we came into, I was looking for something I could do in the backyard, and I had met a person in the elementary school that my kids were attending, and her name was Cheryl Barber Jones, and turned out she was a very accomplished winemaker and consultant, and started talking to her and developed a specific interest to get involved and figure out how to make wine in my backyard as a hobby. Well, as hobbies go amok, so did mine, and after 2 years of hobby winemaking, we grew into a 4-car garage filled with about 120 barrels, a sports quart crush pad, and quite a bit of money that goes into a startup winery when it's just a hobby and you think you're going big. But it was a lot of fun. We did it for through the 2012 vintage, and enjoyed those moments. And part of that process was starting a tasting room in the San Juans. I had come up and sold to several clients, Stan being one of my best clients ever in all of the different wines we made. And I've always loved the San Juans, and so I now have a cafe wine bar called Mike's Cafe and Wine Bar. I don't know where I got the name. And it's directly in front of Stan's present location where he sells his wine. And so I came into it as a total blind amateur and arrived at thinking the wine world was Washington State. And slowly, through my different acquaintances, I ended up tasting a lot of different wines and fell in love specifically with Cab Franc as probably one of my favorite wines, and that has just evolved into being very receptive to a lot of different European wines now, as I get about 6 different distributors who come to me every week with new product to investigate. And so now, as a buyer as opposed to a seller of wine, I'm actually getting much deeper in my own education, trying new things, and I have the different distributors with a mandate, bring me something I've never tasted. And it ranges all over from Negromaro in the coast of Italy to a South African wine or a Romanian wine. But again, I get a lot of exposure to Bordeaux's and blends that I haven't necessarily had in California, Australia, New Zealand. And it's funny to see how my palate has expanded and changed. We were just talking minutes ago how when sometimes you start, you're looking for big, robust flavors because they're expressive. But then as you get a little more into wine, sometimes it's the more nuanced, lighter, layered type wines that grab your interest and you appreciate more and more. So that's been my beginning of my journey, I like to say, because I'm just getting now into a whole new series of wines, and like today.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. We talked a little bit about this because you were saying that you learned a lot because you used to sell wine to people. Do you think that made you more empathetic to the salesperson that came to your wine shop to sell you wine?
Well, I think there's a maturity of what the wine industry means to someone like myself. When I got into winemaking, I thought I was going to make, like I'm sure everybody does, the wine. The as in quotation marks, as if one wine could possibly be the best wine in the world. And I frequently try to get people to reinforce their own value structure in their mouth, because that expression of flavor is an individual, unique perception.
Absolutely.
And I equate it to two people at the top of a mountain back to back and going, this is the most amazing view I've ever seen. The other person says, yes it is. And neither of them are looking at the same view. And I think wine, you have to start with what do you like, understand why you like what you do, understand what you don't like and why, and then from there the path becomes easier to navigate. And by now being a buyer of wines, I'm not just buying for me. Though I do buy wines that I must like, I try to expand wine tasting, and I'll bring in my manager Susan, I talk to Stan, and I'll actually get the input of the distributors as they come through, the salespeople, because my palate is too narrow to be something that I can sell in a restaurant that sees 150 mouths a day.
Yeah, yeah. That's a really good point, and I've talked about this with you about what I do. I look for 80% wines when I'm picking my pick of the month at the store, but I don't always go 80% when I'm picking wines for the shelf, because I have to hand sell those, which you have an easier time hand selling something than I do, because I don't always see the customer that comes through my store doesn't always ask or find me to ask me questions. So when they do this, great. Then I can sell. The Wine Bar and Cafe is 100% vegan. So, and you would, if you ever want to try vegan food and you're on the San Juan Islands, Mike's is the place to go. He does some of the best I've ever tasted. And so, enough said.
Come on out.
Yeah, come on out. It's easy to find. It's right across the parking lot from King's Market, where I work as a wine steward. Well, I call myself the vice manager.
And we tell people at the cafe, King's Market's easy to find. It's right across from our place.
Yeah. Yeah, that's funny, Mike. You are one funny guy.
We have banter. Be ready. Ask your children to leave the room now.
So obviously, I'm a Seahawks fan. He's a Cowboys fan. It was his idea. Let's wear the jerseys of our team. Mike did not evolve into a Seahawks fan. He stayed loyal to Dallas, where you taught swimming and did your.
I did coach swimming there.
And you did your little underwater camera thing.
I had an underwater video company there, but I actually saw the Dallas Cowboys run past me when I was 5 years old. So
that's when it started.
That's when it started. And moved to Philadelphia and had to defend the Dallas Cowboys jersey. And I know some of my family will watch this video. So Eagles who? Cowboys.
Cowboys who? Seahawks.
No, it's just birds, more birds.
Yeah, well, birds are good. Okay, so we're gonna grade them individually. Then we'll compare our grades and come up with a 1 to 4 or 4 to 1, however you want to look to it. These are all from different places, not Loire Valley or Bordeaux. So let's get started. We'll talk about these wines and what we're looking for in Cab Franc. It's also referred to in the Loire Valley as Breton. which is named after the guy in the 17th century who really brought Cab Franc to prominence. A little fun fact.
Fun fact.
Yeah. Now there is one. Now this is a question for you. You can ask a question at the end, but I have a question for the viewers. What is the one grape varietal that can be mistaken or mistaken for Cab Franc? There is one grape varietal that is very close to Cab Franc, and some countries actually called it Cab Franc until they realized it was not that.
I don't know, so I'll have to watch this video and find out.
Okay, let's see what we get on the nose. Number one. We'll put that right over here. So Cab Franc will be vegetal, but what are some of the characteristics, Mike, of Cab Franc that...
Well, it's interesting when Cab Franc starts, when you first crush the Cab Franc, and it's unfermented, people don't realize how sweet red wine is before it ferments. It's starting with
What's a grape?
A lot of sugar, and that sugar can overwhelm the normal flavors you perceive after the wine has gone through fermentation and barrel aged. After fermentation, there is a lot of green. By a lot of green, I mean green beans, asparagus, depending on the sulfur content, bell peppers. All that green is very expressive in, let's say, the first month after fermentation, and can stay quite a while in the barrel as it ages.
So I'm getting that kind of twig on this one.
I get a bark that underneath tone of the bark, peat
in a
forest.
I'm saying this has a little age on it. I can see if you look at the edge.
I do get the leather, yeah, especially on the end of the.
So one of the ways you can tell if a wine is older, if you don't know what it is, or you see, is it gets to be a little bit of a gold brown rim on the edge, and this has a little bit of that. I don't know the age of it, but
Stan wins these contests because I'm colorblind.
Oh,
so
that explains the Dallas Cowboys.
However, like wine tasting, I see colors. He sees colors. We don't see the same colors.
That's interesting.
So that's exactly how wine tasting goes.
You know, I have a trouble that
this beautiful green wine.
I have trouble with a lighter brown and gray sometimes.
Huh.
I think gray comes across to me as brown.
I see gray on occasion. I saw green cats growing up. They were the gray cats, but to me they were green.
Huh. So this is just a dump bucket. Yeah, a lot of leather.
I also get a little bit of the after the tobacco. I get a little bit of the spices that come like with clove.
Yeah.
A little bit of that.
I see that. A little kind of a licorice thing.
Yeah.
Coming through.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Let's see what we get on the palate. Talk about spicy on the palate. The back end. Wow. That leather comes through on the palate. I get some
Towards the front and the jaws, but the spices are nice.
One thing about Cab Franc is it is lighter in acidity than some red wines. Cab Franc is actually the parent of Cabernet Sauvignon. And now it's been proven that it is also the parent of Merlot.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
It gets around.
It gets around. They use it for blending, of course, in the Bordeaux. It's a prominent blending wine. It gives it that kind of tobacco, spice, leather thing that you get in Bordeaux. It's the third grape used, I mean, as far as popularity, if you go Cab Merlot, Cab Franc, then it's blended sometimes with Petit Verdot. Not as much, though. Usually it's Cab Merlot, Cab Franc.
It's funny, after I've tasted it, I go back to smelling it. The leather is more pronounced on the nose. It could also be a little more time in the glass.
Do you get a little bit of that graphite on the mid palate, kind of mid palate through? Personally, I like this wine a lot. I think it's got good balance. Good flavors, nice spice. It is lighter in acidity. The tannins are pretty soft on this. I'm thinking if anything, it's because of the age.
A little red fruit.
Yeah.
But makes everything else playful.
Yeah.
It's not a depressing wine. It's a
light, it has a kind of light, layered,
frisky.
Yeah, exactly. That's a good way to put it. I think it dances on the palate a little bit.
Yeah,
and that graphite to me really hangs on the back end, and I get a touch of red flower coming through.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking about the fruit. It connects with that flower, the red finish.
Kind of that red licorice, red flower sort of thing.
Maybe even
this bottle would
pie cherry. Not as sour.
Yeah, but it's kind of heading that way, but it doesn't.
Yeah, it doesn't make it sour.
Yeah, it's good. I like that one quite a bit. So we're going to grade A through F just like I do on all my videos. And Mike you grade sometimes. I've been in your wine shop and you actually grade.
And after, I'll grade Stan's grades.
Yes. We don't always agree, but we do agree that we like Cab Franc. We don't agree on football teams. We don't always agree on politics, but we always agree that we like Cab Franc.
Again, wine tastings like football.
Yes.
Everybody has their favorite, and everybody's right, and everybody else is wrong.
Exactly. I don't mind if you disagree with me. It just means you're wrong.
That's right.
All right. Let's give it a little rinse, Mike. Now, if that Cab Franc would not last long in the crowd, the one we just had, he would be gone in a heartbeat.
There was nothing wrong with that guy.
It had a little Loire Valley to me, a little bit of something else, but not entirely Loire Valley.
I would, if I was going to guess now, on video, for the record, I would say that the one we just had did not come from a really hot area.
You know, Cab Franc does really well in cooler climates.
Yes, I would say that was a medium to cooler of the general climates, because the hotter you get, the more fruit tends to pop.
Yeah, we know some of those Cab Francs.
Yes, we do.
So this is really quite almost a crimson, but lighter. This is fresher than the other one, for sure. This is newer vintage, absolutely. Clear right on the end, clear to the edges. Okay. Ooh, boy. Now there's some Parazine on the nose. That hit me right away.
Yeah. It's a younger wine.
Yeah.
You smell it right off the bat.
Isn't that interesting that, like you said, when it comes out newly fermented, very green.
Mm-hmm.
So an older Cab Franc would definitely not be as green.
This 2007 that Stan will taste at one point.
It won't have any vegetal on it, really.
That'll be gone.
Yeah.
We'll be happy to see fruit.
But this has a real, talk about asparagus. A little bit of bell pepper on it.
I was going to say, even a little green bean.
Yep, green bean for sure. In fact, that's probably the prominent one.
Yeah.
The fruit comes out underneath. I get a little bit of currant kind of cherry thing underneath.
Mm-hmm.
No leather or spice on this one. At least I'm not getting too much of that. Seems to
I
me...
get a little licorice on the very end of the inhale. The deeper
I can see that. I get a little bit of a old book. It's not corked. But like, you walk into a used bookstore.
Yeah. Yeah, like the cover of the book.
Yeah.
Not the paper necessarily, but...
All right. Excited to try this one. So we're going definitely from an older to a newer vintage. Dare I say chocolate?
You dare.
There's a lot of chocolate on this one. And
Coffee.
spice. Yeah, coffee. Definitely spicy on the back end. Now the spice comes through on this one big time. This is definitely New World, no doubt about it.
Warmer sight.
Warmer sight. Yeah, that's where that chocolate comes from. Like Mike was saying, Cab Franc shows its true characteristics of tobacco, leather, and veggie when it's in a cooler climate. In a New World climate, might come out more chocolate. I don't think there's too much oak treatment on this. if any? Well, there has to be a little bit.
Yeah, neutral probably. On the finish, on the very end of the finish, you get that dry wood, but it's very subtle. Because there's I think, a characteristic of neutral oak. It doesn't have the fruit tone, the caramel, the mocha flavors, but there's that dry woodness.
Yeah.
But I bet this wasn't barrel aged for 3 years.
No.
No.
And you say that about oak. It's funny because in Italy, when we saw those huge, oak
Cisterns.
Yes.
Yeah.
They would have a little Italian crawl in there and scrape them down so they could use them year in year.
Right.
And Chianti and Montalcino and all those different places, you definitely get that wood characteristic in these wines. And I think that was something I didn't think about until just now. Little red flower way on the back of the finish. The chocolate covered currants just are there big time. This one gets fresh on the backside too, and I just get a touch of graphite on this one. Do you get that at all? Right at the back of the finish. I'm getting on the front of my tongue actually.
And I think for me, Stan's much more structured. He's done this 10,000 times. I'm not as structured, so I just kind of find something and then I'll flow in that direction instead of trying to find each category. And this one, I find the flavor at the end goes wider, whereas the first one, which was very polished and very refined, was predictable. The finish kept going down the same track, where at the end of this, in my jaws, I find more flavors than I expected on the finish. It almost widens.
You're right, and that's a good way to put it. That I get a little bit of that Parisines on the very end of the finish with that graphite. Yeah. I like this. I like that wine. That wine has all of kind of, I think we talked about that first one everybody would drink, everybody would finish this bottle off too. It's just well made, definitely New World. I don't think it's as good as Mike's Cab Franc, but we're not having Mike's Cab Franc right now. So.
Right now I think it's better, because you paid for it.
All right. Shall we move on to number 3?
Those were very different, yet very good.
Yes.
It's like back-to-back views. Again, it's...
The many faces of Cab Franc. You can have that expression. And when you make Cab Franc in the New World, you got to be careful, because we talked about one of the Cab Francs that we talked about a Cab Franc a few days ago, and I really don't like that Cab Franc. It's very popular with some people, but it tastes like a vanilla mocha milkshake because of the new oak treatment they put on it.
Depending what I was eating, I would choose one over the other and switch on those first two.
Oh yeah?
It would change what I was eating, would be changing which one I prefer on those.
So what would you match up with that number 1, as far as from a vegan standpoint?
Yeah. Well, you can never go wrong with mushrooms that are done right. You've got
Number 3.
flavors when we do our seasoning, our sauces. The thing that usually sets apart wines in our restaurant is how well they stand up to acidity, whether it's garlic or tomato sauce or both. Because that can separate a wine that doesn't have that acidity, and all of a sudden the wine goes, it was a great wine in the glass, but when you put it with food, it's now got to fight for attention.
It gets a little flabby or downplays the wine a little bit.
The analogy I make is you can have a great singer and another great singer, and when you put them together, maybe they don't work.
Yeah.
You know, Simon and Garfunkel were great because they weren't the same. But if you put two people close together, almost the same, they don't make a duet work.
That's a good metaphor, you could say, or a good analogy. Or well, this has an interesting nose. Number 3. Again, this is a fairly young wine. Might be a little bit older than the last one.
I would say this is in between the two.
Yeah, definitely. Good color on this. I definitely, there's an interesting, like a, almost like a,
I would interject here, but I want to hear what he's thinking.
no, go ahead.
No, if I influencing other people's thoughts before they're completely formed leads them astray.
I'm getting a sweet tart element underneath, but I can't quite put my finger on it. Almost like somebody blended a little tart cherry and green bean together and made a sweet tart out of it.
There's a fight going on the aromatics. Yeah. I agree with Stan there. I'm not sure what the fight is about yet.
I smell chocolate on the nose in this one.
It's almost like I'm getting a nice fruit fight with a little bit of sulfur compounds.
Oh, okay.
And that's
where the winemaking in them comes through. You're getting out of the screen a little bit there.
The other side of that, sulfur compounds have such a different threshold of how people react to them. Some people don't feel them at all, and other people are like, oh my gosh.
You don't like the sulfur part.
I'm more sensitive to it, and in the right instance, like I love Brussels sprouts and asparagus, but I'm not sure I would mix them with cherries.
Right. Yeah.
That's
exactly.
my point. That's
right. Okay. Gotcha. Yeah, there's a little battle going on the nose for sure. It's not unpleasant, but it makes
comes
it more
back
different.
to that book library. I get that on the nose. You mentioned earlier.
Oh yeah.
Profile that stuck with me, and I liked it. Where you walk in and you can smell
the smell of
a slightly dust tone.
It's not super expressive. Now the other two had a little more expression on the nose in this one.
Agreed.
This is a little more muted aromatically.
So where Stan was talking about more the red tones, I see this as a little darker, a little more of the purple.
Yeah, I agree with that. And once again, this is spicy on the finish. I get a lot of black and white pepper coming through on
Lots
this.
of peppers.
Lots of pepper.
If you ever want to Google the way we do sensory perception, synesthesia is a fun category to look up. How some people, like I was communicating with Stan in colors, and as soon as we hear the colors, we have a flavor profile, which is taste, and we see different things. So synesthesia is fun, I think, how people perceive the world, and it helps describe things.
My quote for the tasting this last week that I did was, "The world isn't about reality, it's about perceptions."
Yes.
And
uncertainty if you're into physics.
Yeah. I feel like I'm chewing on some sort of a red flower for sure. Tobacco's there on the back end. The spice. This is elegant like the first one.
The good you brought that word up, because I do feel that first one was elegant. This one is closer to the first one than the second one.
This may be old world because the acidity is a little higher. It's might be in a cooler climate. I'm not sure on that. I'm not always. Sometimes it can be difficult because so many winemakers in the old world are starting to trend towards making new world styles, and that makes it a little tougher.
Stan says red flowers, and I see more purple, and it might just be different chemicals we're sensitive to.
Well, what purple flower would you put to this?
Well, like the violets come off to me.
Okay.
Especially in the flavor as well. As I drink it, I get the red tone that Stan sees, but I also see an undercurrent of darker tones. Mm-hmm. And they're not harsh. They're not all the way to tar.
No.
But they're...
Yeah, and the fruit is on the darker side. I agree with that. With a little bit of red thrown in there, and purple I always have a hard time with, I'll admit that. Purple flowers. Have to go into and chew on a violet stem here, and violet petal one of these days.
As soon as he said stem, I
You
get
got
stem.
Yeah,
I
there's
got a little bit of stem.
not as much pyrazine in this one as the second one, which I definitely think the second one is New World. This one might be Old World. I'm not sure, but the acidity, the freshness, the all that smacks to me of Old World. But I don't get any minerality. But Cab Franc doesn't necessarily always express minerality.
Right. I would not have said this comes from a warm climate. I would agree with Stan. It's on the cooler side of.
Yep. They're all three good so far. I don't think we've opened a bad one yet. I think we can agree on that.
I agree.
Number 4. Number 4. This will be fun to unveil these things. Susie bagged them up. I have no idea. What is there? Now, if you talk about rinsing glasses between even though these are all Cab Francs, they are fairly different from each other. So you want to make sure you get those out of there if you can.
And do.
Darker. I think this might be the darkest of them all.
Oh, it definitely. Yeah, I can see it.
Quite a bit darker. There's no clear. The rim is. This is a newer wine as well.
Yeah, pretty tight.
Yep.
To the edge.
Ooh, there you go. Twigs and veggies. Twigs and veggies and veggies and twigs and twigs.
And I get some. You'll like it or you won't.
Yeah. Guys, I get a little sawdust on this one too, like
Yeah.
on the backside. On this, very interesting smells on this one. I get chocolate as well. As 3 of these, 2 are predominantly chocolates. The number 2 and this one has quite a bit of it.
I'd be interested to ask if this was filtered as a wine. It would be one thing that I would ask my distributor.
Now, why would you ask if it was filtered?
Because I get a very, 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 very small level of Brett.
Oh, you do?
But Brett on its own isn't bad. It's if it's left uncontrolled.
Yeah.
And when you go into the old world, a little Brett gives it that,
Band-Aid.
farm feel.
Yeah.
And then a little more you get to a light Band-Aid. And then a lot more you're going, yeah, not for me. And everybody has different thresholds.
This has a little Band-Aid on it.
Just a little.
Yeah, I see that.
Yeah. And so if it wasn't filtered, and this was in your bottle, you said, I love this wine, I want to keep it for 10 years, that would be a mistake. You could drink it in a year and the Band-Aid would not have probably erupted, but left for 10 years might continue if it wasn't filtered.
Wow. There's a lot on this palate. This is the biggest one, I think, in terms of mid-palate, in my opinion, of all of them.
I also feel more tannins.
Yeah. I like the beam of brightness this one has through. It's like this beam of, like the acidity isn't sharp, but it has a freshness and a beam of light, I guess, through the middle of this wine that really heightens the accentuates the flavors, especially on the finish. What are you getting on, Mike?
I'm still finding I get the, in the front, I get the darker stone fruit we haven't talked about, like the plum and the prune. That though if I look back at it, probably there was some there, but this expresses it.
And it almost like it sings on the finish. I mean, it has that brightness but it's balanced. I don't know how else to describe it. It kind of sings through the finish with a cutting edge to it a little bit.
It holds its tone a lot longer.
Yeah. I'm curious to see which one this one is. This is the most. Don't you think this is the most food friendly of all of them? As far as if you were to make this a better wine, in other words, for the palate, if you had something to eat with this.
Yeah, this is one of the strongest expressions. Some of these are more subtle. This, you're using an energy beam as your analogy. I think this sings the strongest. So you could pair this really well. This would pair well probably with a balsamic vinegar production where you have that deep, dark flavor, a little bit of sweetness. This would stand up and not fall away from that sweetness, like a glaze on top of something.
Yeah, and I think, just to be quite honest, it's the least complex.
Yes,
of all of them.
Yes, this, like I said, it's a great cello. It doesn't have the quartet with it.
Yeah, that's a good analogy. I think if you can, I'm sitting here praising this beam of freshness that goes through to the finish, but that doesn't mean that it is the best of the four in the sense that it lacks complexity. And I'm big on complexity. I like one that shows a little bit of everything. I don't get a lot of pyrazine on this one. It almost has, and you bring up purple flower again, I almost get a purple red flower thing going on. Not a lot of spice on the finish either. There's a little bit, just a touch. But this is a fairly, I would call it a two-dimensional wine. Wouldn't you say?
Simple.
Simple. Nothing wrong with it. But if you're comparing it to these other three, I would say it's the least interesting, other than the brightness and there's nothing wrong with it.
Yeah.
It's a good wine. Don't get me wrong, but it lacks complexity.
As someone who sells wine with flavors, this would be the easiest to sell because the flavor is clean, in that you can pair it with another food, linear.
Yeah.
That's right. Here you go. Oh yeah, this works perfect. Where this one, you have to walk through it a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
So, all right, let's. Okay, so we've graded them. So what did you give number one? Straight up A?
Straight up A.
I went A minus. So that, okay, how about number two?
A minus.
A. So we have a tie.
Yeah, and these, like I said, depending for me, whatever I was eating, I would flip that. It could easily switch.
Yeah, and how about number three?
I did a B plus.
I did a B plus A minus. And then number four?
I did a B plus.
I did a B minus.
Yeah, the thing that I liked about 4 is sometimes you just want it simple.
Yeah, no, I agree. B
You
minus
just-
is not a bad grade.
No,
there's a lot of kids in school that if they had
Yeah.
a B minus average their parents would be proud of them. So I'd say number 4 came in last.
Yeah, I would say I would agree with that. In
But
fact,
let's not say last in a good way.
yeah,
Okay.
these were all wines that I would enjoy as a gift. Let me give you my address.
You make it. Number 3, I think, would be coming third. We both give it a B plus,
Yeah, I would
A minus.
definitely third. So our only arguments are 1 and 2.
1 and 2. We can just call it a tie. How's that?
I'd be fine because, like I said, they're interchangeable for me.
They're definitely tied between us.
Yes.
So I think that's fair. You like number 1 a
And,
little
and
bit.
very different. Tied but different.
Okay, so here comes the unveiling. This is always fun. You want to unveil number 1?
Oh, I thought we were taking our shirts off at
Oh,
this
no.
point.
I'm wearing a shirt underneath. So
I've got muscles underneath. That's why we're the America's team.
we won't talk about muscles. Let's show the pipes.
Yeah. Oh, wow. That's really good.
Okay, unveil number 1, Mike. Tied with number 2, number 1 is
Poggio di Colli.
Poggio di Colli from
Toscana.
Maro
Nice.
Venucci, 2012. And we called it out as the older one.
Yeah.
So it's from Tuscany. It's a Cab Franc from Tuscany. And we both really liked it. Thought it was very elegant and expressed all that tobacco, leather,
Yeah.
spice.
And there's a lot of Cab Francs in Italy.
Yeah.
We sell one of them right now as our glass pour. And
Yeah.
does very well.
Yeah, I like Merlot from Italy as well.
The-
Number 2, I'll let you unveil number 3. So number 2, tied with number 1, was the J. Bookwalter Suspense Cab
Oh wow,
Franc
way to
2000
go!
Connerly Vineyard. Do you like that vineyard?
I do.
Connerly Vineyard, Columbia Valley, Washington. Rolls in, oh, by the way, that's $50. The Tuscany wine. This is also $50. John Bookwalter. Suspense. Now he puts a little Merlot in it. 85% Cab Franc, or
Yeah,
15% Merlot.
yeah. No, Bookwalter is a nice winery, and he did a great job on
Yeah, I
that
think
one.
it, yeah. The nose and the palate were strikingly different. The nose, you think you're going to get all these veggie on it.
Yeah.
And then it's there, but it's very balanced.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. We call this second place. We have tied for
And
first.
again, this is definitely a warmer site than this one.
Yes.
That's what we were talking about.
But Tuscany can get warm, but not as warm as the Columbia Valley.
Not Connerly, that's right.
All right, in second place, we have to be fair.
Yeah.
In second place, with a combined B plus A minus. Oh,
Leah Jorgensen Cellars, Cabernet Franc, in Oregon, 2016.
$27. So we've had this before, haven't we, Mike?
Yes.
Yeah. I thought that was Old World, which is a very hats off to her, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. For making an Old World style wine in Oregon with a very good Cab Franc. Okay, and in third place, we didn't have a fourth place, which is
And
kind of
by
cool.
the way, Oregon isn't too far off some Loire Valley temperatures. That's what you were talking about.
Okay.
Depending, Cab Franc, well, Oregon has a lot of different temperature zones, a lot of
Okay.
different climates. I don't know this one, but
Yeah. Southern Oregon is all it says, which would be a
Southern
little,
Oregon.
little warmer.
Yeah.
Southern Oregon, but yeah, it's still very good. Okay, and in third place, but not very good Cab Franc as well, is the Domaine Gaeta Figure Libre Cabernet Franc 2017. This rolls in at $20.
From a small country in Europe that does a little wine called France.
Yeah, Paydock, which is basically their red table wines. I thought it was better than that, as far as if you
Yeah,
consider
so they
just
did
red
well.
table. Yeah, nice job, guys. Cool. That was fun.
It was. I enjoyed that.
You get to take 2 of them home, so you get to pick.
Wow. Well,
Oh, look at that. He picks those 2. The two most expensive. No.
I'm not stupid. Hence,
Well, there's only, you know, only when it comes to sports. Episode 500, by the way, we talked about this over and over again. Which episode should Mike finally come in on?
we started the conversation at 99.
Or 100. But 500 is epic, so it's
Yes.
good that you're on an epic
I feel
episode
epic.
of fun
Epic.
on 500.
That's why I have no guilt taking the top 2
Yeah.
bottles.
Good job. Good job. Thanks for taking a little time out of your day. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel. I'm getting quite a few subscribers now.
Very
Just
cool.
Growing and growing. I like it. Fun. You keep watching, and I'll keep helping you spend your wine dollars wisely. That was fun.
It was.